My name is Keanu. I learned that sometimes the clearest sign someone doesn't respect you is how they treat you in public, when they think you won't do anything about it. I'd been with Vera for almost 4 years when she humiliated me on our vacation at a Caribbean beach and lost me in the process. In those 4 years, we had progressed from friendship to dating and then to engagement, all building toward a wedding that would never happen because she'd show me exactly how little I meant to her. We met when I was 28 and she was 26. Both of us were living in Chicago, working demanding jobs. I was in commercial real estate development. She was in event planning. We'd met through mutual friends at a group dinner, discovered we had good chemistry, stayed in touch casually for several months before either of us made our intentions known. The Friendship First Foundation felt healthy. We already knew each other's personalities, communication styles, and values. When we started dating about 6 months after meeting, it felt natural rather than forced. The relationship seemed smooth in those early stages. We'd mostly see each other on weekends because of my work schedule. Vera's event planning work was also demanding, but more confined to standard business hours, so she had more free time than I did. I never spotted serious red flags during our dating years. Vera could be stubborn occasionally, had strong opinions about how things should be done, and would sometimes make decisions unilaterally rather than discussing them first. But those traits seemed like personality quirks rather than relationship deal breakers. She was attractive, intelligent, and socially skilled. Good at managing complex logistics through her work. Had close friendships that she maintained. Seemed like someone who'd be a good life partner. We dated for 3.5 years before I proposed. I took Vera to a restaurant where we'd had one of our first dates and had arranged with the staff to bring the ring out with dessert. She said yes immediately and seemed genuinely excited. Almost immediately, we began making wedding arrangements. Set a date about 8 months out. Started the process of booking venues, selecting vendors, and coordinating all the details that go into a formal wedding. I was busy with a major development project at work during this period, so most of the wedding planning fell to Vera, which made sense. She was a professional event planner with the skills and knowledge to handle it efficiently. I'd give input when asked, but mostly trusted her judgment. As the wedding date approached, I noticed Vera complaining more frequently about being tired and mentally drained. The wedding planning was consuming all her free time on top of her regular work demands. She seemed stressed and overwhelmed. I decided we needed a break. A vacation where we could relax before the wedding, reconnect without the pressure of planning and work stress, and just enjoy being together. I arranged to take 2 weeks off work, a significant sacrifice given my project deadlines, but our relationship felt worth prioritizing. Asked Vera to clear her schedule as well. Suggested we go somewhere tropical and relaxing. We settled on a Caribbean resort. One of those all-inclusive places with beautiful beaches, good food, activities available, but no pressure to do anything beyond relax. Booked flights and accommodations for 2 weeks in early June. The trip was supposed to be about reconnecting, about remembering why we decided to get married in the first place, about entering our wedding with renewed energy and closeness. Instead, it became the end of our relationship. The first few days seemed fine on the surface. We'd sleep in, have leisurely breakfasts, and spend time by the pool or on the beach. The resort was beautiful, the weather was perfect, and the environment was ideal for relaxation. But there was subtle tension that gave me concerns. Vera was on her phone constantly, checking messages and absorbed in scrolling through social media, texting, and taking selfies for Instagram. We'd be sitting together, and she'd be on her phone more than she was engaging with me. I'd mention it gently that we'd come here to spend time together, that maybe we should both put phones away more. Vera would agree, but then be back on her phone 20 minutes later. The incident that should have been a more explicit warning happened one evening, about 4 days into the trip. We went to a beachfront restaurant at the resort, a nice place with live music and a good atmosphere. We were having drinks at the bar before our table was ready. A guy approached, another tourist, probably mid-30s, American accent. Started making conversation with Vera. asking where she was from, how long she was staying, the usual tourist small talk. Normal enough interaction. But Vera's response went beyond polite conversation. She was flirting and laughing hysterically at his mediocre jokes, touching his arm when she talked, angling her body toward him in a way that excluded me from the conversation. The guy clearly didn't realize I was with her. Thought she was solo or there with a friend. His attention was entirely on her. I stood there feeling invisible, watching my fiancé flirt with another man like I wasn't even present. After several minutes of this, the guy asked if she wanted to join him and his friends at their table. Vera considered it before glancing at me and declining. When the guy walked away, I expressed my discomfort, told her I didn't appreciate watching her flirt with another man, that it was disrespectful to me and to our relationship. Vera's response was dismissive, said she'd been doing it right in front of me, which meant it was harmless, that she was just being friendly, just playing around, that if she'd wanted to hide something, she wouldn't have done it where I could see. The logic was twisted, but delivered with enough confidence that I didn't push further. I didn't want to escalate into a fight on what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation. But the interaction left me uneasy, planted a seed of doubt about her judgment and respect for our relationship. About a week into the trip, we decided to spend an afternoon at a public beach a few miles from our resort. The resort beaches were lovely, but could feel isolated. We wanted more energy, more people watching, that bustling tourist atmosphere. The public beach was exactly what we'd hoped for, crowded with tourists, music playing from various speakers, volleyball games happening, vendors selling food and drinks. Vibrant and alive. We found a spot under a large shared beach umbrella. Several other groups were nearby. A typical beach scene with people swimming, tanning, and playing in the sand. We'd been there maybe 30 minutes when Vera mentioned wanting drinks. The beach had a bar set up about 50 yards away. I offered to get us something. She told me what she wanted, a frozen rum drink, particular about the flavor. I headed toward the bar. The bartender was busy, and the line was longer than expected. I stood, waiting for 10 minutes, watching the crowd and enjoying the atmosphere. While waiting, I glanced back toward where we'd set up. Could see Vera under the umbrella from that distance. Noticed someone had approached her, a younger guy, early 20s probably, solo traveler, or maybe part of a nearby group. They were talking. Normal enough beach interaction. Didn't think much of it initially. Finally got the drinks. Started walking back toward our umbrella, carrying 2 frozen drinks carefully so they wouldn't spill in the sand. As I got closer, the scene became clearer. The young guy was rubbing lotion on Vera's back. She was sitting up, bikini top untied, letting this stranger touch her while she laughed and made conversation with him. The application was slow, with his hands moving across her shoulders. From my perspective, approaching them, it didn't look innocent. It looked intimate, like something a boyfriend would do, not a stranger on a beach. I reached our spot, set the drinks down in the sand with more force than intended. The young guy looked up, seeming to register my presence and connection to Vera only then. I asked what was going on, kept my voice level despite the anger rising in my chest. Vera rolled her eyes at me, with this smirk that communicated how unreasonable she thought I was being, then told me to relax, that she just asked him to put sunscreen on her back, added that if I was jealous, I should go home. The tone was mocking, dismissive, not embarrassed that I caught her in a questionable situation, not apologetic for the optics, just contemptuous of my reaction. Then she turned back to the guy and continued laughing with him, made some comment about what she had to deal with, framing me as the problem, the jealous, controlling fiancé who couldn't handle her being friendly. The young guy looked uncomfortable now, realizing he'd stepped into relationship drama. But he didn't immediately leave, just stood there awkwardly. I felt humiliation wash over me. That specific burning shame that comes from being disrespected publicly by someone who's supposed to care about you. She'd chosen to mock me in front of a stranger rather than acknowledge my legitimate discomfort. In that moment, something clicked. To me, this wasn't about sunscreen. This was about respect. About how Vera saw me and our relationship, about what she thought she could do without consequences. And I realized I had a choice. I could cause a scene, yell, argue, demand an apology, force a confrontation right there on that crowded beach. Or I could simply leave. I chose silence over argument. Reach down and grab the small backpack I'd brought with our beach essentials, wallet, phone, room key, and my shirt. Stood up without saying another word. Started walking toward the beach exit. Vera called after me. Something sarcastic about me being dramatic. But she didn't follow. Probably thought I'd cool off and come back within an hour. She'd miscalculated. I got back to the resort and went straight to our room. Began packing methodically. All my clothes, toiletries, documents, and everything I'd brought. I left Vera's belongings untouched. Just gathered my things into my suitcase. Checked flight schedules on my phone. Found a flight back to Chicago leaving that evening. It was significantly more expensive than our planned return flight a week later. Had to pay full last-minute fare plus change fees. Worth every penny. I booked the flight and called a taxi to take me to the airport. I put my phone on airplane mode. I later found out that Vera had tried to call while I was in the taxi. Her calls went to voicemail because my phone was in airplane mode. She probably assumed I'd just gone back to the room to sulk. Hadn't realized yet that I'd actually left the resort. I arrived at the airport about 2 hours before the flight. Checked in, went through security. Sat at the gate with my phone still on airplane mode. The flight was about 4 hours. I kept airplane mode on the entire time. Didn't want to deal with calls or messages while trapped on the plane. I used the time to think, to process what had happened and what it meant. This wasn't about one incident on a beach. This was about a pattern I'd been ignoring or minimizing for months. The stubbornness I'd seen as a personality quirk. The unilateral decisions. The flirting at the restaurant. The constant phone use. The dismissiveness when I expressed concerns. All of it pointed to someone who didn't prioritize me or our relationship. She did what she wanted without considering the impact. She expected me to accept whatever behavior she chose without complaint. And the beach incident had crystallized everything. The mocking tone. The public humiliation. The refusal to acknowledge legitimate boundaries. That wasn't someone ready for marriage. That was someone who saw me as optional, disposable. Someone whose feelings didn't really matter. I couldn't marry that person. I couldn't build a life with someone who'd treat me with contempt when I expressed discomfort with her behavior. I landed in Chicago around midnight. Turned my phone service back on while waiting for my luggage. My phone immediately started buzzing. Dozens of voicemails from Vera. Text messages progressing from confused to concerned to angry. The early messages, when she'd gotten back to the room and found me gone, were confused. Asking where I was, whether I was okay. Then, there were messages from a few hours later, when she'd realized I'd actually left the resort. More panic now. Demanding to know what I was doing, why I'd left, telling me this was immature and dramatic. Most recent messages were angry. Accusing me of abandoning her on vacation. Calling me controlling and jealous. Saying she couldn't believe I'd overreact like this. No apologies. No acknowledgement that her behavior had been inappropriate. Just anger that I'd had the audacity to respond by leaving. I read through all the messages without responding. Then I blocked her number. I got home to my apartment around 1:30 in the morning. Unpacked. Tried to sleep but couldn't. By morning, I'd made my decision entirely. The wedding was off. The relationship was over. I sent a message to the group chat we had with friends who were involved in wedding planning. Just a brief statement. The wedding was canceled. Vera and I had ended our relationship, and I'd appreciate privacy while I processed everything. My phone immediately exploded with responses. Confused questions. Concerned messages. People asking what happened, whether we could talk, and whether this was fixable. Then Vera started calling from a different number. When I didn't answer, she began texting from it. Long messages alternating between pleading and accusatory. Saying she couldn't believe I was doing this over something so small. That I was being ridiculous. that we needed to talk face to face, that she'd made a mistake, but I was overreacting. I blocked that number, too. I spent the next few days fielding messages from mutual friends. Some sympathetic, some critical, most just confused. I gave minimal details, just said Vera had disrespected me publicly, and I decided I couldn't marry someone who treated me that way. I didn't elaborate on specifics, and didn't want to litigate our relationship through friends. Vera had to stay in the Caribbean for a few more days before flying back. I'd taken the only immediate flight available, and she couldn't change her ticket without paying penalties she apparently wasn't willing to pay. When she got back to Chicago, she came straight to my apartment, showed up unannounced on a weekday evening, banging on my door. I looked through the peephole, saw it was her, and didn't open the door. She stood there for over 30 minutes, knocking, calling through the door, pleading for me to let her in so we could talk. I stayed silent inside and waited until she finally left. The next day, she showed up at my workplace, came into the lobby, and asked the receptionist to call me. Said she was my fiancée and needed to speak with me urgently. I told the receptionist to have her leave, that we were no longer together, and I didn't want to see her. Security escorted her out when she refused to leave voluntarily. Over the following weeks, Vera tried multiple approaches. Messages from friends' phones, emails, letters were sent to my apartment. All of them followed the same pattern. She'd admit she'd made a mistake, but frame it as a small thing I was blowing out of proportion. She would say I was being too sensitive, too jealous, too controlling. She even promised to be more considerate going forward, but never actually acknowledged what she'd done as genuinely wrong, just as something that had upset me that she'd avoid doing again to keep the peace. She never took real responsibility, never showed understanding of why having a stranger rub lotion on her back while mocking me in front of him was fundamentally disrespectful. I didn't respond to any of it. Eventually, maybe 3 weeks after I'd left the Caribbean, she made a vague post on social media. Something about how some people can't handle confidence. How real strength means being yourself even when others try to control you. It was clearly directed at me, painting herself as the victim of my jealousy and insecurity rather than taking accountability for her behavior. I didn't respond, didn't clarify or defend myself publicly. Just let her have whatever narrative she needed. I spent the following months processing everything. I canceled everything for the wedding. Lost deposits on several vendors, venue, caterer, photographer. It's worth it to avoid marrying someone who'd shown me she didn't respect me. I eventually told family and close friends a full story, not as gossip, but as an explanation for why I'd ended an apparently good relationship so abruptly. Most people understood. A few thought I'd overreacted, that couples work through disrespect, that walking away so definitively was extreme. But the people who knew me best, who'd seen how Vera had treated me over the years when I'd mentioned minor incidents casually, weren't surprised. Said they'd had concerns but hadn't wanted to interfere. I wished they'd said something sooner, but understood why they hadn't. Looking back now, almost 2 years since I left that beach in the Caribbean, I understand everything more clearly. I learned that how someone treats you in public reveals how they actually see you. Vera had felt comfortable mocking me in front of a stranger because she didn't fundamentally respect me. My feelings, my dignity, my boundaries, none of it mattered as much as her doing whatever she wanted in the moment. I learned that conflict avoidance enables bad behavior. Every time I dropped an issue rather than addressing it fully, I'd communicated to Vera that her behavior was acceptable, that I'd complain but ultimately tolerate whatever she did. I learned that engagement and wedding planning can create momentum that pushes you toward marriage even when the relationship isn't right. I'd gotten caught up in timelines and logistics and lost sight of whether I actually wanted to marry this specific person. I learned that walking away immediately from disrespect is sometimes the healthiest response. Not every situation requires extended discussion or attempts to fix things. Sometimes the clearest communication is simply leaving. Most importantly, I learned that self-respect requires action, that I couldn't preserve both my dignity and a relationship with someone determined to disrespect me. That choosing myself over a broken relationship wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Some people still think I overreacted. That leaving her on a Caribbean beach over sunscreen was extreme. That calling off a wedding over one incident was rash. But those people didn't see the pattern. I didn't experience the accumulated disrespect. I didn't feel the humiliation of being mocked in front of a stranger by the person who claimed to love me. The sunscreen incident wasn't the problem. It was the final, crystallizing moment that revealed the problem. Vera didn't respect me. Probably never had fully. I had seen myself as someone who'd tolerate whatever she did because I loved her, we were engaged, and too much was invested to walk away. She'd miscalculated. When she told me to go home if I was jealous, she'd meant it dismissively as mockery. She expected I'd absorb the humiliation and stay because the alternative was too drastic. Instead, I'd taken her at her word and gone home. I ended the relationship and chose my dignity. And I've never regretted it. Not for a single moment. Because I know what the alternative would have been. Marrying someone who didn't respect me. Spending years or decades being mocked, dismissed, and expected to tolerate it. Becoming smaller and smaller to accommodate someone who'd never accommodate me. That future was worse than any short-term pain of ending the engagement. Vera had shown me exactly who she was on that beach. I'd believed her and acted accordingly. She'd expected me to accept being humiliated. But respect isn't negotiable. Dignity isn't optional. Best decision I ever made.